to join me in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Our first item of business is request to address the board. I have received none. Is that correct? No. All right, so we'll proceed to the approval of minutes. May I have a motion, please?
So moved.
Second. Any discussion on the motion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Next, we have a presentation. Dr. Schiller, would you like to introduce
Yes,
us?
you may recall that last year, Dr. Torman chaired up a committee called the East Penn School District Comprehensive Plan Committee. The comprehensive plan was written and submitted to the state and posted on the website. Dr. Torman tonight would like to talk about an element of that plan, or a goal of that plan that we'd like to bring to fruition.
Good evening. Wait for this to go up a bit. Thank you. Good evening. This evening we'd like to share the work that's been done by a committee in the district that was really a follow-up to a stated goal in the East Penn School District Comprehensive Plan about obtaining accurate and reliable data, perceptual data, from students and parents in the district to be part of our continuous improvement plan in East Penn, taking some time to take a look at the work that we do and decide what we do well, and also to take a look at what we need to improve upon. The last survey that was administered in the district, which was administered to faculty, staff, and parents, was done in 2007. The membership of the committee is listed on the slide. We had representatives from teachers at the elementary level, the middle level, the high school level, as well as support staff and administrators in the district. We had 8 meetings that were held from June of 2015 to August of 2015. During those meetings, we started with a review of the research and what is out there regarding school climate. We had an essential question of practice that guided our work, namely, what are the attributes of a positive climate that should be measured in an East Penn School District Climate Survey. And then throughout the evaluation of the research, focusing on the essential question, we in East Penn came up with the attributes that you see on the screen. A safe learning environment is something we felt was really key for our climate. Communication, students to students, students to teachers, teachers to students, staff members to students, and so on. A supportive environment for everyone in the East Penn School District. Use of our facilities to be sure that they're enhancing the instruction that's delivered on a daily basis, as well as supporting co-curricular and extracurricular activities. And also extending the options for students to participate in life beyond the classroom, namely drama, club sports, and leadership in the district. The criteria that the committee came up with in order to decide what survey instrument we would use is that we wanted demographic information to be gathered from all participants in the survey. We wanted a format that would allow us to take a look at reports of the data that was gathered and also an analysis of the data. And the method for distribution of this survey, how would this be done? Electronically, paper, a combination of both? What would that look like? And also a cost, and in this case, the cost range for the instruments that we looked at varied from $0 to probably in excess of $20,000. So we kept cost in mind as well as we looked at different survey instruments. The one that the committee decided upon is the Comprehensive School Climate Inventory, known as CSCI, which is an instrument developed by the National School Climate Center based in New York City. Some of the background for this survey instrument and actually for the School Climate Center is it was founded in 1996, became a freestanding nonprofit in '99, and has done a myriad of surveys both for state departments of education, school districts nationwide, and also foreign agencies that have commissioned their services to do surveys as well. Some of the key attributes of the climate inventory is the strengths of the inventory, we believe, is the fact that it is research-based, heavily research-based. It also has metrics in it that are conducive to really measuring the reliability and validity of the data that are gathered. And anyone who would like to take a look at additional information about the instruments, the web address is there for you to peruse at your leisure. Also, we have in Ohio measuring about 68 middle and high schools over 3 years with this measurement tool, and in Iowa, 46 high schools over 4 years. We in East Penn are looking at a survey instrument that will be used at the elementary level, grades 3 through 5, middle level 6 to 8, and high school, as well as a parent guardian survey and staff and professional staff and support staff survey, as well as administrators. Within the survey instrument, based on the research, there are 13 dimensions of school climate that are measured by the CSCI, and those are listed, ranging in major categories from safety, teaching and learning, interpersonal skills, specifically looking at respect for diversity, supports for adults and students within the district, what our institutional environment looks like, physical surroundings, that ties in with our criteria for facilities, and also social media, which now is a topic that we want to gather information about. And then there is a staff-only section that deals with the leadership, particularly at the building level and the district level, and also professional relationships that exist within the district itself. So these 13 dimensions provide the foundation for the questions that are part of the survey. Key features and benefits for this survey is it's research-based, it's been highly field tested, it measures core populations within the district, and it's easy to administer. It's a short survey, about 15 to 20 minutes. It can be via paper or online, and there's also detailed support provided by the National School Climate Center to guide our work when the survey is administered and after we get the results as to next steps. It's functional on multiple platforms as far as our computer use and technology. There are English and Spanish speaking versions. The unique feature that really was a highlight for the committee was the fact that we get school level data with the survey. We get aggregate data across levels, such as elementary, middle, high school, and then district-wide. We also have customization options for the survey, which are limited because we don't want to deviate from the reliability and validity of the instrument. So really the only options we have to divert from that is in the demographic section, because the questions themselves are based on those 13 dimensions. But we do have an option to add open-ended questions if we so choose. And then there's additional training that's available for us if we choose to use it in the form of professional development. Also, we are given instructions on how to read the data that is shared with us, and also possible steps for improvement as far as what we find are our strengths and what we find in the district that are areas that we would need to work on further. In order to administer the survey, there is a school climate portal that the National School Climate Center would set up for us. It's a secure access. It's real-time online response rates. There would be a link that each school would have that would be sent to parents and guardians, sent to staff members within the district. And you click on the link and it takes you to the portal. The surveys are anonymous. Also, real-time response means a principal could sit at his or her desk and check on a daily basis the response rate to the survey. How many people are responding, and just monitor that as he or she sees fit. There are also full detailed reports that come with the survey results and action planning worksheets. The portal itself has a unique username and password that's given to people who are going to take the survey. And there's also a task list to help monitor the progress of the survey as it's taking place in real time. Supports and resources that CSCI has available to us are listed there. We would make use of those as time goes on, and we would also have the benefit of someone from the National School Climate Center working with us as we go through this process. It's part of the fee. The report benefits give us a portrait of strengths and needs for each school and the district. There is variability within school and across population subgroups. For instance, there are report outs for students by grade, by gender, race, English language learner, extracurricular activities, special education. There's also graphic presentations, which I'll show in a minute. And there are set priorities for action based on the results that we gather. As I mentioned before, all responses are anonymous. The CSI is a needs assessment. It's not an assessment tool that's looking to find fault with anything that we do in the district. Actually, it's a really good way to celebrate the things we do well. And it's also to acknowledge the areas that we need to focus on and work to improve in the future. So it really is a needs assessment. Where are we right now in East Penn since 2007, and the feedback that we get as far as perceptual data. Some of the examples of the graphs that are provided in the data analysis that's given to us. For instance, here we have an overall school profile. And you'll see the school climate ratings, positives, negatives, and neutrals. And at the bottom of each column are those 13 dimensions that were identified earlier. Talked about school safety, talked about relationships. So the color codes are the dark blue would be your lower scoring items, the mid-color blue would be your medium scored items, and the light blue would be the higher scored items. And each one is broken out by that. So for instance, in this case, we have the students responding. We have a profile for students. We have a profile for school personnel, which would be support staff and professional staff. And we also have a profile for parents. One of the features that the committee was honed in on was the fact that we needed to be able to see inter-rater or have inter-rater reliability between the groups that are taking the survey. So if we have students and the average or the mean on the score is very high and the other two groups are very low, what is that telling us? So we really wanted to be sure that we had that inter-rater reliability and that the questions are being asked in each of the 13 dimensions can be measured within each group that's responding. Group variability is mentioned here, median scores and rating patterns for students in each of the 13 dimensions, which are listed on the left. Again, safety, teaching and learning, and so forth. So you can see that piece that's given out as a data point. Also, the rank order of dimensions from median scaled scores. So we, again, have the 13 dimensions on the left, and you can see with each breakout group where each one fares as far as the rank order of scores. What are the strengths? What are the areas for improvement? Subgroup ratings are also listed by grade. For instance, on this slide, students by grade 9 with the number of students who took the assessment, grade 10, 11, and so forth. And that would be the case for each level, elementary, middle, and high school. We also have an item-by-item response. For each of the 13 dimensions, we could see the rating of the response given with the Likert scale of ranging from strongly disagree to strongly agree. And then also if there are responses that were not given to a specific question. Additional resources that are made available to us at the conclusion of the data analysis and the survey implementation are listed on the screen. These are resources that are available to us free of charge. They're online, and we would make use of those as we would see fit. Also relevant readings that relate to the survey development and also implementation are listed as well. And at this point, the price tag for this particular survey is, as of 3 months ago, was $16,000 as a cost. Questions at this time?
Any questions for Dr. Barr? Mr. Ballard?
Yeah, first of all, how many responses or what percentage of the population would you need to get back on this survey before the results would be valid?
I don't know that. I would have to check with the National School Climate Center.
Okay, well, I'm trying to look at this from the standpoint of, if you're talking about sending out a survey that may be on paper, but I'm not sure what the mechanism for it to be on paper is, like distributing, sending it home with the children or whatever the thing is. But you talked about links in some email being sent out to either staff or parents or whoever might be on some list. And I'm sure that Mr. Moan would have some concerns about that kind of thing, because that would typically look like somebody was phishing you in terms of asking for a lot of personal information on a link that you click on in an email. So, for instance, I would say that there would have to be a lot of spade work on the front, telling people not only what would be coming, but when it would be coming and what it would look like, and maybe even hosting the link on one of our servers so it's an East Penn address, not some link off to national whatever service type of thing, because I know that I look at those things and at least some of my spam filters will throw it right out. If A, I don't know what's coming, B, all it is a link to go to some website saying it's for a survey, but I haven't been told it's coming and that type of thing. So the advance notice that you'd have to get out to get a reasonable response would probably be, pretty extensive. So I want to understand what we would have to get back as a way of a response rate and what we would tend to want to get for the 16K we have to put into the survey.
There's absolutely, there's prep work that needs to be done to roll this out. And it's actually reaching out to everyone who we would intend to be a participant and lay that all out and say, do an introduction, this is why we're doing what we're doing, and also saying timeline-wise when to anticipate an email coming out. So that's a lot of groundwork on our part to make sure people understand the purpose of it and the rollout of it and how valuable it is for us as a district.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Dr. Munson?
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Torma, and the rest of the committee that selected this. It looks like a lot of work went into it. I guess I have two questions, but the first follows up on Mr. Ballard's question about paper surveys. And what you showed here was sending emails and links to people. How does the system deal with parents, students, the other populations that are being surveyed who either don't have access or, what is more common, are not comfortable using a system that requires a username and password and so forth? And what percentage of the population do you anticipate that will be? How does it coordinate between, so things don't get double counted between paper that gets sent out and links that get sent out? What's the protocol for that?
Well, right now what we're considering is doing this survey online, with exceptions of people who don't have access or would need to do it on paper. So predominantly, we're looking for results to come in via online surveys. The logistics of that we need to work out internally. And that, again, we're looking for a high percentage return rate, which would be contingent upon when we would administer the survey. There's key times throughout the year where you would want to administer a survey and key times when you would not. So based on the information from the National School Climate Center, there's a window of opportunity in October when things are kind of slow since the beginning of the year. There's a window of opportunity in January to early February, and there's also one that you could possibly do at the end of March. But one of the things you don't want to do is have it intersect with activities that are going on that is just something that comes out and people aren't really attuned to it. Or when we have state testing times in the spring. So we have to decide internally when the best time for us that would be for us. And the National School Climate Center said it really is a district decision when you like to do it. But based on their research, they have some key times that it seems districts tend to send surveys out to participants.
What is their feedback, if any, that is, what does the CSCI say about an online-only survey?
Most districts that they work with use it online right now.
Okay.
So other than that, I don't have anything else to share at this point.
Okay. The other question I had to do with the sample data graphs that you provided us with. Are there any facilities for identifying the statistical significance of differences in these numbers? Because in many of those graphs, it's impossible to say without the numbers, but just eyeballing them, they look like, distinctions without differences. And I was surprised that nothing was marked on them to show, is a 3.57 meaningfully different than a 3.60 in a statistical sense? Have you seen feed outs that provide that information as well?
No, not at this point. That's something we could follow up and see if there's more detailed information.
Okay. I mean, going back to the cost issue, that's something that can be done manually, but it seems for $16,000, they should be providing that kind of information, presumably built into their system. I guess I'll just say I'm skeptical. I so often sit up here and feel like I'm the idiot in the room because I know so little about the details of educational statutes and so forth. Survey design and delivery is more in my wheelhouse. It's something that I do professionally, and I'm very skeptical of a survey that is only done online because, particularly in the case of a climate survey, the very people that are not surveyed are likely to have a much different opinion, precisely because they're the type of people who get left out of things because they're not online or they're not uncomfortable or they're not comfortable being online. So if the district is to move forward, I would strongly recommend that a system be devised so that it isn't just the people, the eager beavers who go out of their way to get a paper survey, but that we make it available to everyone regardless of what their relationship is to technology. That's all. Thank you.
Mr. Donatello.
You had mentioned intended audience. Is it safe to assume this is going to a limited audience? People that are going to be doing a survey. It's not going to 100% of parents and students.
Yes.
There's going on.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
That's it. Ms. L?
Thank you, Dr.
You're
Trump.
welcome.
My question is about the data, beyond what the district would see. Do you know what happens to that data as far as the corporation and what they would do with it?
No, could find out.
Could you find out?
Yes, please.
Dr. Barker?
To sort of follow up on one of Dr. Munson's questions, the comment that the tool was confirmed to be reliable and valid, is that speaking to the statistic sampling methods, or is that some measurement of this is a valid representation of school climate based on things that are important? What aspect of
The latter.
So what they're measuring has an impact on.
Yes, based on the
performance of
research.
school.
And based on the surveys that have been done.
Mr. Chairman.
Sounds like this has been used in a number of different districts. Have you reached out to any of them to see how it's been received? Have you talked to anyone about the results that they have gotten from these surveys and how they've implemented the actions that they have seen come out of the survey? And I'd like to understand if this, product is actually being seen and valued going forward.
I'm sorry.
I would like to understand whether they felt that the product that they got was something of value and was actually being implemented, or that they felt that it was something that really led to change, because you're using this to identify shortcomings and potential areas for improvement. Did they actually follow through? How did they look at the results that they got, and they feel that they got what their money's worth?
I think if I hear you correctly, I think you're asking what their follow-ups were once they received the data as well.
And did they feel like they got value for their money, what they spent?
I have not.
I think it would be, I'd like to see some feedback as to whether districts in the state or outside of the state, how they view this.
And a couple of questions as well, Dr. Torma. What mechanism do they have in place to prevent duplicative answers? So, for example, if I fill out the survey and then fill it out a second time and then decide it was so much fun, I want to go back and fill it out the third, because I want to make sure that my hot button issue, I get as many one votes as possible in there, so that, I'm stuffing the ballot essentially to make sure the district focuses on that.
None.
Not at all. And when it comes to, you said there was a role, students, school professional, or school personnel or parents, do they self-select their role, or do we send a different link to students than we do to parents?
Self-select.
Okay, so somebody could inadvertently or intentionally, my kids can decide that they know more than me and answer on my behalf. That never happens. Now, I guess what I'm seeing here, there are 13 areas. Do they ask a series of questions in each area to come up with a score? Or is it like one of the items is, I can't read it on my small piece of paper, even without my glasses, but support for learning. So are they asked just a general question, how well do you feel the support for learning is happening, or are there several questions that go into that?
There are several questions that are asked in different ways to get to that particular dimension, feedback on that dimension. And they're asked differently of the different groups that take the survey.
Okay.
But they're all feeding into that one dimension based on the question.
Because a lot of times I've seen reports like this, and the question is always, therefore what? So there's consensus that we need to do work in one of these categories, let's just say social media, but we don't have any direction on what to do to improve it. How much detail do we get back on these particular items to say, your social media is inadequate because the messages you're putting out are not clear, or you're not meeting us on the social media platforms where we are, or I wasn't even aware that the district did anything with social media.
There are some questions that have IEs attached to them, giving the respondent examples, and there are others that are very general in nature. So your specificity that you're mentioning right now probably would not be the case for all the questions that are asked.
Yeah, so my concern with many of these things, the students don't feel safe at school. Is it because they don't feel the playground equipment is safe? Because they don't feel safe walking to school? Because they don't feel safe because school personnel treat them in a way that they don't appreciate? Or is it because of their peers? Is it because of students in older grades? There are a lot of reasons why they might not feel safe. And if we get an answer that says we need to improve safety, we might say, well, the answer to that, of course, is to hire a school resource officer, where that might not get at the root of the problem at all.
The examples that are the questions deal with some level of specificity that it could be related to playground, it could be related to bus, if we're focusing on school safety. Their bullying is mentioned. There's also relationships with people, whether it be peers or elders. So there are questions in the survey that get to that level of specificity. So they're not totally general in nature, but there may be an entree question that's general, but a follow-up question somewhere else in that survey for that particular group of participants will have specific examples in them. And then we also have the opportunity to ask open-ended questions of participants, but the advice given by the National School Climate Center is to hold off and see where our areas of perhaps concern are, so that we can hone in on those questions and get the best data possible to be able to move forward.
I guess my concern is just that I want to make sure that what we get tells us not only where our areas of focus are, but what specifically we need to do about it. If we were to ask our students their opinion of school lunches, I'm sure that the responses would be all over the map. I don't like them because you serve grapes and I don't like grapes, or I don't like wheat bread, or I don't like steamed corn. And trying to then address it, you may have 6 students who love steamed corn and 6 students who hate it. So do you keep offering it? Well, it's always a challenge. So I personally would be interested, before we invest a lot of time, I'm not so worried about the money as much as if we get a report that causes us to go off in a bunch of directions that aren't actually going to get at the heart of the problems, then we'll waste an inordinate amount of staff time and energy, and a year from now be no better than where we are today. So if we could get more details of maybe kind of what some of those reports looks like, the analyses, that would be really helpful to me anyway. I don't know if my other board members. Any other questions, Ms. Allen?
I was just wondering, are there different surveys for, we're not an urban district, so is there a certain one that you can choose from, or is it across the board, just one?
My understanding, it's across the board based on level, so elementary, middle, high school, and then your staff members as well. I don't know that there's a version for urban, suburban, rural.
Any other comments? Dr. Schiller?
Yeah, a couple of wrap-up comments. First of all, Dr. Cronin, thank you very much, and please extend my appreciation to the committee. I know a lot of work went into this. I know you reviewed a number of different surveys and landed on this one. In response, Mr. Arnshaw, to your last point, which I think is a good one, surveys have to be used responsibly. Surveys are the beginning of discussion and further analysis. They're never the end point, in my opinion, at least the way I've used them in other districts, and I have used published surveys, not this particular one. But you have to have the understanding with your staff and with the whole district that it's a beginning point for identifying strengths, and particularly with the areas of need, that you don't just look at the area of need and go off and put things in place to try and address it. You have to do further analysis. There's no way around that. In fact, I think that's the responsible way to handle surveys. The next step for us would be to, and I have a list of 10, Dr. Torma probably has notes and we'll compare. Great questions, and I think our next step would be to go back and try to get as many answers and as much detail as possible to answer your questions. Issues like calling other school districts throughout the nation, hundreds of them, but a sampling of them to find out how they're using it and the strengths and weaknesses of the survey instrument itself, and the other issues you brought up. We would bring that back to you. Right now, the $16,000, if you recall, is in the proposed budget for 16-17. But we will continue to have discussions about many of the items in the proposed budget as we move forward with that, with the budget development. And so we will be able to bring you back the information you need. You will be able to have further discussion about it. If the board feels it's appropriate to move forward with the survey, we would like to do so in 16-17. And if for whatever reason you feel it's not appropriate, then we won't. But we'll try and get you as all the information you asked for tonight and try to get that as soon as possible.
Thank you, Dr. Tom.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
All right, next we have the report of the superintendent, Dr. Schiller.
Thank you. Good evening, everybody. I'd like to start with, I guess, an announcement, and I've been keeping everybody up to speed on the formation of the East Penn School District Foundation. But I am very pleased, and I know those who have worked hard on this are also very pleased and excited to announce that the foundation is now official. There is an appointed board of directors, and we have approved bylaws, and now we have subcommittees moving into the area of plans for filing for nonprofit status, beginning community outreach, and really starting to talk about fundraising. So it's an outstanding group of individuals. Frankly, I've been very surprised how quickly it's moved, and that's directly due to the competence and the passion of those people who've been involved in this all along. I'd like to announce the Foundation Board of Directors. Sal Barastro is president. Stacy Galliardo is vice president. Jill Killo is secretary. John Zayatz, treasurer. Dr. Ken, and then the other directors are Dr. Ken Bacher, Dr. Julia Kibblebeck, Dr. Stan Landis, Rod Luckenbill, Karen Gennaro, Laura Groh, myself, Heather Slantoff, Tom Wallach, Stephen Zakos, Reverend Wally Vinovskis, and Dr. Ann Zayatz. Those are our board of directors. And again, a very passionate, capable. Our last meeting was terrific. It was probably just a little more than an hour, and I couldn't believe how much we got accomplished by simply people stepping up and saying, I'll do this, I'll do that. We have representatives from our parent population. We have representatives who aren't parents, who are community members, all different professions. We have educators on it. We've got a very good response from our teaching staff and our administrative staff, of those who want to be involved. So I'm thrilled, and I think everybody is thrilled. I think you're going to see some real good things coming out of the Education Foundation, which again has that STEAM, science, technology, engineering, arts, and math as the focus for their fundraising and all of their efforts. So congratulations to all of them. Some student and staff recognition. At Willow Lane, our gifted and talented classes in 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade students participated in the Wonder League robotics competition. Students worked in teams using math, creativity, and coding skills to solve 7 space-themed missions. They were judged by a variety of criteria, including problem-solving, creativity, teamwork, presentation, research, and social impact. There were 1,700 teams enrolled across the nation. Of those teams, roughly 260 of them completed all 7 of the coding robotics missions. Willow's Wonder Dash team placed 3rd in the nation, 3rd of that group. And they're now the Pennsylvania State Champions. So congratulations to those students at Willow Lane. A couple mentions about sports. I'm sure most of you realize, making the all-state team is a big deal. That's a very competitive and very highly coveted award. And we have from our football team, Kyle Boney, who was named to the Pennsylvania Football Writers Class 4A All-State Team. He broke numerous individual season records, 2,452 yards and 42 TDs in one season. And his career record as well was a record 3,068 yards rushing and 51 total TDs. So congratulations to Kyle Boney. A great athlete and, from what I understand, a great kid. Field hockey, again, all state. Alicia Cooperman, Madeline Dorn, and Meredith Shoulder. 3 individuals from the same team who make all state. It's pretty amazing to me. And then also, there's something called the Pennsylvania State Academic First Team. Delaney Ahn, Alicia Cooperman, and Carly Philbin selected to that. All 6 of those individuals from the Mass High School field hockey team. Last but not least, I'd like to mention that Jefferson Elementary School has received recognition, and this is for the 2nd consecutive year. Jefferson School has been recognized by the Pennsylvania Department of Ed Division Federal Programs as a Title I distinguished school. Jefferson qualifies as a high achievement school, performing in the top 5% of Title I schools based upon aggregate math and reading PSA scores that meet all annual measurable objectives. They're going to be honored at the 2016 Title I Improving Schools Performance Conference on February 7th. We will have representation there, including the group building principals. So that is an amazing achievement. I think I mentioned to you last year, we are very, we've been very interested in doing a lot of dialoguing with the teachers and the administration of that building, basically asking the question, wow, congratulations, and what are you doing? And we want to replicate as much of that as possible across the district for all of our students. So again, congratulations to that staff and those students. That concludes my report.
Thank you, Dr. Schilder. Any questions or comments for Dr. Schilder's report? Mr. Ballard?
I just mentioned that as a member of another institution that's just tried to get the 501c3 status, be prepared to hold your breath for at least a year.
We were told 3 months, so I'll be happy if it's 3 months. I'll be happy if it's in between. How about that? Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? All right, thank you. Next, we have item 6, personnel. If there's no objection, I'll take a motion on that entire item.
So moved.
Second. Any discussion on the motion? Mrs. Allen, will you please call the roll?
Mr. Ballard.
Aye.
Ms. Allen. Aye. Mr. Champagne.
Aye.
Ms. Fuller. Dr. Munson.
Aye.
Dr. Bacher.
Aye.
Mr. Donatelli.
Aye.
Ms. Hyde. Mr. Earnshaw.
Aye.
9 ayes.
Motion carries. Next, we have our business operations. Let's take, if there's no objection, we'll take items A through E as a single motion.
So moved.
Second. Any discussion on items A through E? Mrs. Allen, will you please call the roll?
Ms. Fuller. Dr. Munson.
Aye.
Dr. Bacher.
Aye.
Mr. Donatelli.
Aye.
Ms. Hyde. Mr. Ballard.
Aye.
Ms. Allen. Aye. Mr. Champagne.
Aye.
Mr. Earnshaw.
Aye.
9 ayes.
Motion carries. Next, we have item F, which is the adoption of the proposed preliminary budget for next school year. May I have a motion, please?
So moved.
Dr. Schilder, did you want to comment on this at all?
Mrs. Sertle, would you like to comment on this at all?
Keep in mind that this is just the first step in many steps in the budget. It's just a preliminary budget starting process that allows us to apply for exceptions, see where we come in at, what we could qualify for the tax rate, and really the budget is based on where we think we can qualify for exceptions. So many other drafts of the budget will be coming later on. Normally they're not done until like April. The board gets a notebook. May there's another adoption of a proposed final budget, and then in June we adopt the final budget. So there'll be many changes coming on board, and I know that Dr. Schilder wants to keep the board informed more times and earlier than we have in the past years.
Exactly. It seemed to me last year there, and this is just the process. That there's quite a lull between January and April, and I think we have a lot to talk about. I think we have a lot of things. You saw my list of priorities that are not in the budget. Actually, it was not prioritized when I showed it to you. Now it is prioritized, so that's my next step in bringing that forward to you. And I want to keep those discussions on the table between now and April, so that everybody has a real good feel and understanding of what's in the budget and what's not.
So this allows the district to apply for exceptions. We are not under any requirements to use any or all of the exceptions. I don't believe we've ever used all of the exceptions we've qualified for.
Correct.
So that this is just one step that gives us some options. As Mr. Ballard has reminded us repeatedly, we still don't have a state budget for the current school year. So we don't even know what this year looks like, much less next year. It makes it exceptionally difficult for the business office to have any kind of way to provide an estimate on it. Any discussion on motions?
I have a question. The allowable millage was 17.215, and you have in here a proposed 18.04. Can you give us an idea of dollar amount that constitutes to the homeowner?
Yes, well, the increase to the homeowner from, in the budget book from last year, the gross property tax bill was on the average of $3,614. With this tax rate, there would be $174 increase for the year.
I guess the other couple
But
of questions.
don't expect it to stay that. I'm sure it won't stay at that.
It's going to go down?
I would expect so.
Because that was the other thing that I had mentioned, the superintendent's address prior to this was that there were some monies that had not been discussed. The Hampton Crossing money will come into effect this year. We have warehousing coming into effect, there's more monies, I think we said $500 a square foot, or $1 million a square foot building. And that building is nice, chunk of money. I'd really like to see what we do to maintain status quo and others.
Some of those new buildings are already in there. The assessments that we've included in the budget are actually higher than our current assessments that we've gotten from the county based on some construction, but we based a very conservative look on adding some of that construction in. We'll have a better idea as the year goes on if it's actually going to be finished in time.
What about cost of medical? I hear a whole bunch of stuff going on medical going up, that Obamacare is an abomination.
Our rate increase has been, is expected to be 0%.
Really?
Yes.
Okay. And then how much is this going to pension?
Pension, our retirement contributions in the budget are $17,986,456, but then half of that comes back from the state Commonwealth.
How much of that is that into our pension crisis? Is that give you an idea? What kind of situation are we in with the pension crisis versus what we're paying out for that? Is that kicked in yet?
I don't know what you mean by kick in.
Well,
I mean, I know it's been
I know it's
increasing over the
big,
years.
yes.
So, Mr. Donatelli, the rate, the contribution rate for employers is set by the pension board and then approved by the state legislature. So over the years, they've had, about 15 years ago, the pension fund was overfunded. So the legislature passed an increase for current employees and an even bigger increase for themselves, and they promised the Commonwealth, citizens of the Commonwealth, that it will never affect your taxes, it won't have an impact. And every one of us who have ever dealt with retirement costs, we said that's impossible. And sure enough, that combined with the financial crisis in the markets, suddenly the pension fund became severely underfunded. So the actuarial calculations would have required significantly higher contributions, not only from school districts, but since the state pays for half of those, it would have affected the state budget as well. So the legislature has on several occasions enacted measures to put in rate collars and to lower the amount of the contribution and to amortize the contributions over longer periods in order to reduce the annual outflows into the pension fund to cover that liability. As such, they increased the total by extending it further in the future, one of the unfortunate side effects of that. And so we pay in what we're required to pay. We can't pay in any more or less. And right now, we're nearing the peak of what the projected contributions will be as a percentage of payroll. But we've got, I think, about three years until we hit the actual peak. But
Yeah, so 2021 was the peak, but it's going up much more gradually than it has in the past. We've had big increases going through this year yet, but there might be some big ones.
So there will be increases, but they'll be much smaller annual increases.
I'm curious what that percentage increase was.
Yep. Yep.
Thanks.
And of course, every year, they recalculate it based on the experience with their actual returns on investments and mortality of the people in the pension plan, the number of new people joining the pension plan, that they have very complicated actuarial calculations that determine what the fund should be and what level it should be at, and then they adjust the rates accordingly.
I guess I was just curious what that was.
Any other questions? Ms. Hyde?
I just want to say thank you. I know this is a work in progress, so I will support this preliminary budget. I am going to ask that please try to get an index. I know you work hard all the time on it. That's the only thing is, I'm really against the exceptions, but I'm willing to see where it goes, but please try your hardest with index.
Other comments on the motion? Dr. Munson?
I actually want to echo what Ms. Hyde said. I think it's great. I'm particularly interested in starting the discussion earlier. I really appreciate the administration's focus on priorities so that we can be more proactive rather than reactive with budgetary things. And I too, in my short time here, have already learned that this particular preliminary budget is that doesn't tell us very much about what the budget's going to look like in the end. And so I'm looking forward to having those discussions over the coming months. Thank you.
Any other discussion on the motion? Mrs. Allen, will you please call the roll?
Mr. Donatelli? Ms. Hyde? Mr. Ballard?
Aye.
Ms. Allen?
Nay.
Mr. Champagne?
Aye.
Ms. Fuller? Dr. Munson?
Aye.
Dr. Bacher?
Aye.
Mr. Earnshaw?
Aye.
7 ayes, 2 nays.
Motion carries. Next, we have item 8, curriculum. May I have a motion, please?
So moved.
Any discussion on the motion? Mrs. Allen, will you please call the roll?
Ms. Allen?
Aye.
Mr. Champagne?
Aye.
Ms. Fuller? Dr. Munson?
Aye.
Dr. Bacher?
Aye.
Mr. Donatelli? Ms. Hyde? Mr. Ballard?
Aye.
Mr. Earnshaw?
Aye.
9 ayes.
Motion carries. Next, we have our second reading of our policies. We'll be bringing these back for final reading and adoption at our next board meeting. Do you want to make any comments to start?
Yes, please. We'd like to let particularly the new board members as well as the existing board members know of the process that we go through after a first reading, because this entire review is rather a new process that we're taking on so many at the same time. Right after the first reading, the first thing that happens is Dr. Torma and myself, we sit down and we review our notes. What I have, what I heard you say, and what Dr. Torma heard you say. And we do our best to incorporate everything that we heard into those policies. Where we have concerns, maybe there's an administrative regulation about, or administrative concern about something that somebody said that, well, we don't quite agree with that. We think that shouldn't be taken out, or we think something should be put in. We then have a second meeting, and that meeting is with the board solicitor. And again, we go through every single policy with the board solicitor bringing his notes as well. And from that angle, we're looking obviously at legal issues to make sure that your suggestions pass legal muster, and again, as well as your suggestions being something that the administrative team would recommend or not. And so that's the way the process happens. And then tonight, of course, and the policies in front of you, hopefully incorporated almost all of what you were talking about and your suggestions. Now, we already realized we missed some, and we had an email, a couple of emails earlier today, And I'm going to, a couple of the policies, when we get to it, I'll start out by saying, oh, here are a couple of things we missed. And you can make your own notes there. I also asked Dr. Torma if she would kind of be on call, so to speak, so that if she hears something that we're discussing, or I'm mentioning, or I'm not recalling correctly, Dr. Torma doesn't need to be summoned to the podium. She can just come right up to the podium and say, I'd like to offer another perspective or additional information. So she'll be kind of contributing to the conversation as we go through these, and I'm hoping that will help increase our efficiency as well as our accuracy. So that's about it.
Okay, great, thank you. So we'll go ahead and start with policy 100. The administration is recommending deleting this PSBA model policy from our own policy. Does anyone have any comments they'd like to make on this policy? All right, great. We move on to 101. There were no changes from our first reading to this one. Does anyone have any comments they'd like to make on this?
Just a point of order, Mr. Jones.
Yes.
Does that mean that the final reading, this policy will not even show up in the packet?
For 100?
Yeah.
Correct.
There'll be a statement that this policy is deleted or something.
I think we'll just leave it out of the list of policies that we're adopting.
The chart that we've been keeping, actually, we have a master chart that sweeps in all of the OLO policies as well. So the master chart, the previous group of policies, by the time we're finished this whole thing, this will be about a 20-page document, but it'll be a good historical archive of everything we've done and when we did it, what was deleted, what wasn't.
But when we go to approve these, the text of policy 100 and the others, unless the board decides to adopt them, then we won't even have it included in the motion for adoption. So 101. Any comments on that? Boy, if we can keep this pace up, that would be great. Okay, 102. You can see that a number of changes were made to this particular policy. Okay. Policy 103. Yep, 103.1.
This is one where I would like to start by calling your attention to some additional changes that were made. Page 5 of 8, under referral to law enforcement authorities and reporting requirements, third paragraph, in the first sentence, where it says local police department, that would be changed to law enforcement authorities for the sake of consistency throughout all of the policies. We missed that one. On the fourth paragraph, in the fourth paragraph, the same issue, at the end of the first sentence, it would say, subsequent to notification of, not to, but of, law enforcement authorities. Moving on to page 7 of 8. Under step 3, investigative report, second paragraph, it would read, the complainant and the accused shall be informed of the outcome of the investigation, period. And including the recommended disposition would be crossed out. And those are the changes only changes I have from 103.1.
So those are the additional changes that will be incorporated into the policy for the final reading. Any other comments on this particular one? Or any concerns about those proposed changes? We'll move on to pass the attachments to policy 104.
We also have one additional change on this one. Page 2 of 3, under guidelines, complaint procedures, employee third party. Third paragraph, it's only one sentence. The last word is acceptable. Change that to accepted. And that matches the wording of the previous policies, using that word accepted. And that's the only additional change.
Any comments about policy 104, including that change? All right. Policy 105. Comments on this one? Okay. Policy 105.1, the original one, EPSB recommended it be deleted. And I don't think that anyone had any concerns about that since the language was incorporated into the new policy 105.1, which follows. So we'll move on to the new policy 105.1. Comments, questions here? All right, policy 105.2. All right, policy 106. We're on a roll tonight. If we keep this up, somebody needs to buy some Powerball tickets. Policy 107.
I have some additional changes on this one. Under authority, we recommend that that first sentence be taken out, stricken completely. The second sentence would read as follows. The board may determine, so the words reserves the right would be stricken. The board may determine which units of the instructional program constitute planned instruction and are subject to review as opposed to adoption by the board. And then on the page 2 of 2, last paragraph, the designated assistant superintendent shall maintain a current list of all planned instruction offered by this district, period. And cross out the remainder of it.
Mr. Ballard.
Do we have an explanation by the solicitor of what the difference is between planned instruction and curriculum, and why adoption is not the correct word in this particular procedure?
Mr. Fisher, we also made a call to EPSB about that. So when you're finished,
Go right ahead first.
and I'm going to ask Dr. Torma if she could share with us her call to EPSB about that very question. The difference between curriculum and planned instruction, Dr. Torma?
The curriculum is the content and the adherence to the academic standards that the district puts forth for students in East Penn. It's the global piece of the work that we do regarding education and instruction in particular areas. As opposed to planned instruction, which we would commonly refer to as a scope and sequence of the work. For example, when the board approves the curriculum, they're approving the areas and the content that all students need to be proficient and have an understanding of based on academic standards. Internally, we would take a look at scope and sequence of that same work and decide timeline for when certain things should be taught, the resources that may be used to teach that content, and other ancillary things that we may use in the district to enhance that instruction. So it's specifically about how the day-to-day instruction occurs, not to the granular level of in the classroom, but generically across the board, what we should be doing on a regular basis in the district, as opposed to the curriculum, which is a wider scale. That's a difference between the two from the perspective of PSBA and our perspective.
So I think, since I have a daughter who's who took British literature, content, including materials, would be a list of the books that would be acceptable for use in teaching British literature, whereas the curriculum typically does not include a list of those books.
Yes.
That'd be a fair example.
Okay, well, all I can do is I will review if there, the definitions and see if there is any need for change. I understand your comment.
Okay, because it goes to the title of this procedure, which is adoption of something, which we've just removed all adoption from the content of the procedure. So we need to clarify what this procedure actually
We
is.
recognize that. I will also add that this policy, this particular policy, is not mandated. It is not one of the ones that the school board says is a mandated policy. But they call it as a legal liability. So I guess there's some legal issues in here that they feel would be very safe for a board to adopt, but it is not mandated. It's one of the discussions that we had was, it should be eliminated. Now, this has been your policy manual for a long time, with the exception of that authority currently. But we'll certainly review it. And I absolutely understand what you're saying. It's kind of counter using the word review as opposed to adoption. But we also recognize, I think the board talked about this last time, that the board doesn't really want to get into, forgive me if I'm wrong, the adoption of objectives to be achieved by all students and some of the specificity of the content, including materials, activities, and instructional time. That's a pretty specific type of thing for a board to be involved in.
I just want to make sure if we are required to adopt something by school code, we adopt it. If we're not required, then we don't have to. But this is an adoption policy rather than a review policy.
It's not mandatory. Certainly, Mr. Fisher can take that into consideration.
Any other comments on 107?
So I guess I have one question. I just went back and looked up what the original what the current policy 107 says. And so the term that's used in the current policy is course of study. So is that not a term used now, or how does that relate to planned instruction and curriculum?
And you looked up what term?
So this is
Our
called-
current
our
policy?
current board policy 107 is entitled Adoption of Courses of Study.
PSBA has changed that course of study to planned instruction.
So it's just a new word? Okay.
Dr. Barker?
Actually, when I was reading this, I was thinking a lot of these terms are in the program of studies that we do adopt. It seems like it does go into specifics of what the course is supposed to achieve, and sometimes even books that are used to achieve those. And something that we do get a copy of, but I was thinking a lot of this sounded like the actual course of studies, and that might be in line with Dr. Munson. I didn't go back to the current one, but that sounds like what the intent was somewhat.
Any other comments on 107? Mr. Shannon?
Maybe I missed something, but the opening statement to the purpose the board shall provide. Why is the board providing this? Is it something that, we're not going out and doing this ourselves. Is it something that the administration should be providing for us to evaluate and adopt? And that, to me, the way that sentence is, I don't see us, that's not our role.
Well, the board provides it in the sense that we authorize expenditures for staff to teach, for materials to be purchased. So we definitely do provide for it.
Provide for, that might be the key
we provide for it. We don't provide it directly.
Well, it doesn't say that. It says the board shall provide.
Well, we do provide it. I mean, I provide for my family.
I understand what you're saying. Make sure all that-
Because they eat a lot. Okay, so they'll take a look at that as well. Other comments about 107? All right, I take it back, don't buy a Powerball. All right, 108. All right, 109, this is another policy that the administration recommended. It was a PSBA from their model policy, but the administration recommends deletion. You don't have any concerns about deleting that? Same with policy 110. All right, policy 111. Policy 112. I guess you should be calling out P7. All right. 113.
Bingo. No, you have a question.
Yes, please.
So I know I kept everyone very late with all my questions and concerns last time. I waited till 1:13 to bring it up this time. A number of answers to my queries in the first reading had to do with legal statutes. And one of the questions I had about this policy was the paragraph on page, it's 404 of the second reading of this draft. The first full paragraph, it strikes me as unworkably specific in the requirement, in the level of specificity of the requirements for sort of out for advertising. And it struck me that at the level of policy, it made more sense to sort of to be more general about it, so that changes in technology and practice and so forth didn't put this immediately out of date. One of the responses to some of these things was that a lot of this is mandated by statute. This one is here, it still does not have any citation to any statute at all. And so I'm curious, was this one of the paragraphs that you went over? And what statute requires this language, and why is that statute not cited?
So if you look at the previous paragraph tells you that the district is required to do these outreach
Right.
activities and cites references
Right.
29 and 30, and then this goes on to clarify what those are. So I think it's-
If I could just add to that, we could simply stick 29 and 30 at the end of this paragraph. That's the citation.
Okay, so do these statutes require that this be stated in our policy? Or does it simply, I mean, if the statute itself directs us what to do, our policy can simply be to follow the statute, can it not?
I'll comment on that. We talked about that. As the administrative team for this particular policy, we feel it should be here. We rely on this, we use it, we're challenged on it, we need it.
Okay.
So that's our recommendation. In terms of the paragraph you referred to, Dr. Munson, we actually do that. We can do that word for word. So we're very diligent with that, but we really feel this policy and the next one, with students with disabilities, we need that language in there.
Okay, very good, thank you.
Mr. Ballard?
I'll echo from the federal standpoint, although it cites Pennsylvania statutes, there are federal requirements that have all of this stuff in there for child fines. And you will get challenged legally if you don't have it in your procedures that this is what you do. So it's best to put it in there.
Just to bring full closure, that 129 refers to a Pennsylvania regulation, 30 The citation of 30 is actually from the Code of Federal Regulations, that's the federal statute, so it's good they can actually have it. I don't disagree with your general comment, you know, it's the law, why you include it. This is actually a good one.
Other comments on 113? Ms. Champagne?
I guess the last meeting I asked why the delegation of responsibility paragraph had been stricken, and I know somebody needs to go back and look at that. I just wondered why, or what the conclusion was on that.
What page are you on?
Well, it was on the original policy, it was 3 of 5, the delegation of responsibility. And it was taken out. And I don't recall why. Somebody was going to look into that, as I recall.
So the paragraph is there and it's struck down. I'm not recalling it, sorry, but maybe Mark is recalling it. Dr. Torma? See, I don't have it in front of me, so it's hard to do.
I think the recommendation was, although that's not an incorrect statement of the law, I don't think it's, we decided it was absolutely not necessary to include it.
I believe your comment was that it was not a legal requirement to include it.
That's right, I think that was it. It was just horribly worded. I didn't like the way it was worded. I don't think it added anything by simply deleting it, to put it that way. Or the reverse of what I just mentioned. It just wasn't legally required to be done.
Nor did we need it.
Okay.
Any other comments on 113? 113.1. One 113.2. One 113.3. One 113.4. No, 113 is important. It's got many sub-policies. Okay, 114. One 115. Mr. Champagne.
On paragraph, on page 2 of 3, under the first paragraph, child abuse prevention requirements, struck some language and added comply with. Again, I guess the question I had was, how do we verify that they have actually done that? We asking for a certificate?
We called them, Dr. Torma?
I reached out to LCTI and talked to the administrator who works with this program and said, he told me that what they do is require the documentation based on the child abuse prevention requirements, and they have them on file at LCTI. Beyond that, there's nothing more they do. They make the requirement to have the documents on file, and they're not responsible for any type of disciplinary action for those employees, because I think a little bit later in this policy we talked about that last time as well. But everything's on file that's necessary, and that's the extent of the record keeping.
I have to deal with this act in a different context in my life, and we have to maintain paper files with their clearances that they've submitted. So we've got copies of those that we keep secure, so you know, that we don't disseminate them, since it's confidential information. We don't just pass it around.
No, I'm not looking for that, I'm just wanting to make sure that there's compliance, and that if there's a way to ensure that, that they do what they say they're gonna do, not just accept, okay, we've got this.
I can tell you that this is one of those statutes that in a different context, I have responsibility for this program. If I allow someone to work with children without getting their clearances first, I can be jailed for it. So
No,
I promise you that
I appreciate what you're saying, and I agree with you. I mean, that's my point. I just want to make sure that we are doing everything we possibly can to ensure that they have complied. And I don't know if they verify, to you or to someone else that they have all this information. Is there some way to ensure that we know that they've got what they're supposed to have?
Go ahead.
Huh?
No, go ahead.
That's a responsibility of the LTI work study coordinator to be sure that that paperwork is on file. He assured me that no employer is working with our students if that paperwork is not on file.
That's exactly what I was going to say. And short of us doing it ourselves, we have to rely on them.
Well, if they're telling you that they are administering this in the proper way, then if you feel that's enough, I guess I would take that.
Mr. Allen?
Well, the way this paragraph is worded, if you notice, it says district and programs. If we had a program, we would be responsible for getting that material together. Saying it's at LCTI doesn't cover the picture. If we had some kind of gifted student mentorship program at Air Products, and we were sending students out there without teacher supervision to one of these places to get mentorship under that, and it was done by the district, then we would be responsible for the compliance, and the question is, what would we do under those circumstances? So we can't pin it all off on LCTI.
Well, that's exactly why it's phrased that way. Because anything that we would do under our roof, so to speak, we will comply with it to make sure we are in compliance. Anything that's done under another roof, the LCTI roof, they have assured us that they do the same thing. And I'm comfortable with that. I don't really understand why the board is raising the question, but I'm comfortable with it.
Any other comments on policy 115? On 16. And lastly, 116.1. Okay, thank you. So with the revisions, these will come to us for adoption at our next board meeting. Then we'll get to do it all again in the second half of chapter 100. Thank you.
That's my question. Going back to what we discussed at the beginning, for the policies that were new, that we're not going to adopt, we just don't adopt them. The existing policies, we actually have to rescind them if they're being recommended to delete and we're agreeing that, since they're existing policy, if we do nothing, I'm assuming they would just go on and we have to actually rescind them.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but I think all the new policies have been, all the policies some of them are being renumbered and replacing existing policies.
Right.
So it seems to me we're probably capturing everything by simply adopting any new policies. However, to the extent the administration and I will double check just to make sure there's nothing hanging.
Because that's the case for 105.1, but 109 and 110, I don't think we're adopting the new 109 and 110. So I'm assuming if we did nothing, it would continue to be our policy.
We'll double check to make sure that there's not an existing 109 or an existing 110.
Okay. 109, 110, is it?
I think that's what it's listed as deleted, deletion recommended, and didn't see a new policy.
Okay.
Then we have to have a list of old policies and where it's going. It's either being deleted or it's being superseded by such and such a policy.
I think that would be very helpful for our motion. So would you build that into the text.
To the chart or the motion?
Either way,
A list?
you know, a list of the policies that we're adopting and ones that we're removing from the manual.
I think we should probably work that into the chart. That way you have everything in front of you.
Well, since we'll have a motion to adopt, we'll have to refer to a list, or we'll have to list them. We can't just say adopt policies. We'll let the board work that out. Mr. Fisher says he's got it.
That's what we're going to hear.
All right. Any other comments on policies before we move on? All right, thank you. Next, we have other educational entities. Lehigh Career and Technical Institute, Ms. Hyde.
We meet at the end of this month, but we haven't met since the last December meeting. Yeah, I was thinking, did I miss a meeting? So as of now, there's no report.
Yeah, since our December meeting is held the second Wednesday of the month
Right.
instead of the fourth Wednesday.
I got a little nervous when I saw my name on here. I didn't know to do it. Thank you.
Thank you. Carbon Lehigh Intermediate, Ms. Fuller.
Thank you. It's very sad to see that one of our CLIU students was in the news, the 5-year-old child, autistic boy that wandered off of the member of the Batista family. And it caused great sorrow, of course, throughout the intermediate unit. But the team sprang into action. There's something called the flight team, which are counselors that come together and are available to the classrooms, the school district teachers who are to whom the child that support and help make it through this difficult time. Moving on to budgets, the Carbon Lehigh Intermediate Unit has assembled the budget, and our schedule for adoption is that on November the 12th, it was reviewed with the Superintendent's Advisory Council. We made a preliminary presentation to the IU Board on the 16th. On the 21st, our meeting was presented finally to the IU Board. In January, we submitted to the school district for board action, and in May 1st, we submitted to Pennsylvania Department of Education. What it means to the East Penn School District is that this budget is a framework to keep the CLIU operational. So our contribution for 16-17 will be $136,236, which is an increase of $1,132. The overall operating budget for this year and for last year is, I should say for the next year and the current year, $823,241. And again, this is supported by all of the school districts who are members of the Carbon Lehigh Intermediate Unit. And at the December meeting, we had the opportunity to meet with some students and enjoy a performance. These were the deaf and hard of hearing children in the elementary group, and they presented us with some Christmas songs. And in some cases, they signed them. In other cases, they sang them. And the fun one was Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer, having to do with put your left foot in, put your right foot out. Well, the reindeer were putting in their antlers, and board members were challenged to do it with the children. It was a lot of fun to see. Another presentation that we saw, and it was a video presentation, was a group called Satori, which is a chamber music group. Now, Carbon Lehigh Intermediate Unit has had its own educational foundation for many years. And their educational foundation provides grants to teachers to do something extra over and above for the children. And this particular group wanted the deaf and hard of hearing children to have a better understanding of music. So it was see the music and hear the art. So the chamber group was brought together with the students, and these were older students, they were perhaps middle school students. artist. So the musicians played, an artist drew, and as the artist drew, the art was shown against the wall, and the children had the opportunity of holding and feeling the instruments as they played to feel the musical vibration. It was really quite something to see. And getting back to the benefit of our school district, our district student count for the period ending November 30th, 2015, was 432 of our students received services. Major assignments included enhanced autism, multiple disabilities, and career academy program learning support. Related services included adaptive physical education, speech and language pathology, and work-based learning. And that should be. So that concludes my report.
All right, thank you, Ms. Fuller. So for the information of our newer board members, the intermediate provides a variety of services that cannot be economically provided by an individual school district. So by pooling the needs of multiple school districts, they can more cost effectively provide those services. So these are providing specialized therapists who maybe we only need a quarter time of one of those specialists. So by them employing full-time specialists and serving the needs of multiple districts, it's more cost effective. The budget that Ms. Fuller referred to is their general operating budget that covers their basic overhead. All of the services are provided on a fee-for-service basis. So when we use intermediate unit resources to provide for the needs of our students, they bill us for that. Some of that is covered by medical access, some of it's covered by federal pass-through funds, others just comes out of our special ed budget. Any other comments or questions from Ms. Fuller's report? All right, thank you. Next legislative, Mr. Ballard.
Well, every second goes by, we set a new record for the longest budget stalemate in the state of Pennsylvania. In case you're wondering, as of this second, it's been 194 days, 21 hours, 11 minutes, and 27 seconds since the budget should have been passed. On December 29th, which was just squeezing it in before the end of the year, the governor approved a partial budget. He took a budget bill that came out of the Senate, and which was the budget bill from the House, and he line item vetoed a large amount of it, but he did allow a certain amount of the school subsidy money to be released in this line item veto budget. So we should have by now, Mrs. Zertible, received some kind of funds.
Yes, we did. We received $11.4 million this month from the state.
Okay, so we've gotten some cash infusion from the state, but it is not settled yet. And I will remind you that in approximately 3 weeks or 3.5 weeks, the governor has to make a presentation to the legislature on what his next budget is supposed to be. So we may be looking at trying to, quote, deal with 2 budgets simultaneously. I will also point out that what was in the budget that was line item vetoed, even if it hadn't been line item vetoed, there would have been less money for East Penn than we assumed in our budget. Okay, so we are currently operating a budget deficit, if you will, to some extent, from the fact that unless there's a major change in what that money stream is going to be, even if they restored the budget, quote unquote, that was passed, we won't have as much money as we budgeted for. So we have a little bit of strain there that we have to deal with. There have been 2 other things that have gone on, but first I want to mention that today is the first day of January that the House has been back in session, and the Senate is not showing up until the 19th. So we have nothing going on, unless it's doing something in the back room somewhere, discussing the budget, that anybody could do anything constructive to fix the problem. So it's not clear that anybody feels now that they've got some money to flow to social services and schools, that they have any great incentive to solve the problem. And if you read some of the material from one of our local representatives in the paper today about what the quote problem is with Governor Wolf's budget, you'll understand where the problem is, because the statement is that nobody wants to raise any taxes. Well, there's a problem. If you read that Standard & Poor's report that I sent you that came out in late December, now Standard & Poor's is not known to be a partisan organization, okay? Let's cut that out. Standard & Poor's just says financial ratings. And it says that the Pennsylvania budgets that have been produced to date by both houses have structural deficits in them, meaning there isn't enough revenue to pay for the expenditures that are in the budgets. And there's only two ways to fix that. You either cut more out of the budget, or you raise the revenues, i.e. taxes in general, or fees, or whatever you want to call them. So there's two ways. There's only two ways to fix a structural deficit. You've got to match the expenditures with the revenue. You either raise the revenue or you cut the expenditures. And neither set of parties, particularly the legislature, has been willing to do one of those two tough things, because they don't want to face primary opponents from their own party should they raise taxes, or voter apathy if they raise taxes, or whatever the purpose is. They don't want to do anything that would endanger their state-paid job. So right now, we still have the same stalemate that we've had for 194 days. There's nothing moving, and there's still a structural deficit in whatever the budgets have been passed. So if anybody's looking for relief of any nature, it's not yet in the cards. And as I said, there have been people already talking about the Washington solution. That is the idea of some kind of state continuing resolution that just sort of funds everything the way it was last year until we can settle out what we really want to have for a budget. So right now, like I said, we're 194 days, approaching 195 days without a budget. We have a budget process that's supposed to start in February, and we're going nowhere fast with that. So don't look for anything. I mean, this is absolutely the most horrendous political situation I've seen in the state of Pennsylvania in 30 years. It's just going nowhere, and I wish I could give you some better information, but it doesn't look like there are people of goodwill on both sides who are looking for a compromise. And if you can't find a compromise, then somebody's looking for a win, and you know what happens, that means somebody's going to lose, and so there's going to be a mess. But thank you, Mr. Armstrong.
Thank you, Mr. Ballard. Any comments or questions for Mr. Ballard for his report? All right. Are there any items to come to the attention of the board this evening? Well, I have one item. We have our business manager, Deborah Serval. This is her last board meeting. She's been with the district now, we won't say how long. It's been a while. But she's had a very successful career here, and I wanted to personally recognize her and thank her for her years of service to the district. In my 14 years on the board, she's always had the answers that we've needed. She's been a very knowledgeable professional, carried out her duties with fidelity, with integrity, with honor, and with diligence. And I really much appreciate all you've done. The board members decided that we'd like to send you and your husband for a little treat. So we have here some flowers for you. We also have gift cards that the board members have bought to send you and your husband to dinner. So thank you so much for your service, and I think everyone, if you would like to join me in a round of applause.
Thank you very much. I wasn't really expecting anything. I've always been very proud to say that I work for the East Penn School District, and it's a very good district, strong supportive community and parents, and strong supportive board. I appreciate everyone's support, and my staff has been wonderful to work with, and all the administrators are so cooperative. I've been very happy working here for the last 35 years. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Prior to our meeting this evening, we had an executive session. We covered items related to negotiations and real estate. The school district is closed Monday, a week from today, for Martin Luther King Jr. Day. Our next board meeting is 2 weeks from tonight. With that, I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
All in favor?
Aye.
Meeting's adjourned.